quick prediction for this match.
It's hard to tell because this is the first time we're going to see L'Oreal now in the Philippine scene. At least this is the very first time. So picks like that, you have to be wary of them because although she may be considered an overpowered pick, if you don't have experience using her, it can actually lead to your own loss. So this is going to be a bit difficult. I would have to give
a
it...
risky pick.
Yeah. I mean, I have to give it to Bren, maybe just for the sake of them being, that more experienced veteran team. But at the same time, draft-wise, Myth Esports looks like a pretty deadly team fight composition. So we'll have to see if Bren Esports can actually adjust to that.
As for me, I like that. I like the L'Oreal pickup. It's just that I think you kind of lost the counter pick that you have. We're talking about L'Oreal a lot, but we're not talking about the counters to L'Oreal. One of the counters that I have from the top of my head, maybe throw in an Alistair there to hold her and stop her from using that ultimate of hers to ravage the enemy team. And that wasn't picked up by Myth Esports, so maybe they're going for a different way. Overall, just Bren Esports for me.
Bren Esports.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with these two right here. I mean, aside from just the draft overall, I've always been a fan of the organization itself, and I'm pretty sure that leading up to this, after an unfortunate circumstance in the Valor Cup wherein they fell in the semis, I think they've come back with a vengeance right here, and PPGL might be their time.
Whoa. So you go for Bren Esports as well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. 3 votes for Bren Esports. So let's get the show started. Game number 1 versus Bren Esports. And Myth Esports, mainit na mainit at ipasa na natin sa ating caster duo, Azurai and Riku. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Azurai, and of course here with me now is Riku. So we'll be watching game number 1 in this best of 3 series between Bren Esports and Myth Esports. So what do you have to say about the compositions?
I'm really happy at what I'm seeing at the moment. There's a L'Oreal pick being firstly picked dito sa PPGL, and at the same time, slightly disappointed because hindi nakita yung Alice. I was expecting, okay, let's amplify the damage some more with this L'Oreal pick. But at the same time, maybe it's okay to step back a little bit further and also rely on the protection dito kay Kuroki, which is on this Violet. So totally understandable. Meanwhile, dito naman sa Myth Esports, it's a very standard pick, and it's also wise for them to pick the Chognar for themselves just so that they could get that protection. Double assassins on their side. I kind of wonder what their plan is in mind kasi this composition for me is pretty hard to pull off, especially that you're against the composition naman ni Bren Esports.
Yeah, definitely. But I think maybe just because, having that Quick Knack and Irie would be their answer, I guess, to the thought of this zoning potential that Bren Esports has. And, he protect, he attack, but they now have the Quick Knack.
I did not see that coming, Azurai. But
how could you not see that coming?
You're right. You've used this before.
Exactly.
So going back to the rotation na nakita natin between Bren Esports, it's a very aggressive invade, which actually suits the Violet. The 1-3-1 rotation that we keep mentioning during the early phases of the game, where you will rotate with your mid laner, your roamer, your jungler, and have a safe top and bot lane so far. But at this point, 30 seconds on the clock na lang dito sa Abyssal Dragon natin. So I kind of wonder, because we mentioned yung playstyle ng Myth Esports is a very reserved and safe playstyle at the same time. So they're gonna be very counter-reactive sa mga galawan ni Bren Esports.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be very crucial here just because it seems like they have to ramp up all of their assassins before they can make something happen. Anyways, there's a little bit of a tussle in the mid lane as Kid as well as NY do take quite a bit of damage. NY though on the Chognar gotta be very careful here, activates the heal, tries to back off, and Kit just gonna be trying to hold his hand for the meantime. And there you have it. Abyssal Dragon will be up and running already, but Spirit Sentinel here and now for Bren before they maybe go for a bigger objective.
Exactly. Level 4 power spike dito sa side ng Bren Esports. So that would be a condition for them to secure this Abyssal Dragon. Meanwhile, the rest of the members of Myth is still trying to get that level 4. Slapstick, totally understandable because siya yung jungler. You want him to try and take advantage of that level 4. But at the same time, you see Bren Esports is super aggressive with the rotations. They keep on getting your might buffs, your sage buffs, and if they can, maybe everything at this point. But if they are spotted at the top side of the map, this is a great response to Myth Esports to actually take advantage and get that Abyssal Dragon.
Definitely, but they have to get something else aside from this one if they do maybe take down the Lubu, but Lubu will be playing safe. That's going to be at least a fair trade, I would say. A little bit of the gold lead for Bren here, which I think is just from all of that counter jungling that you were talking about.
Yeah, I love the adjustment of Myth Esports. No contest whatsoever in the Abyssal Dragon, which means iba yung priorities dito ni Bren Esports. Maybe try to congest that might buff for Kriknak para hindi siya masyadong makakapaggalaw in terms of the long-term plan for Myth Esports for their composition. So maybe it's okay for them to give up this dragon because all in all, the lanes is gonna win anyway.
Ultimates are up for all of these teams, and we're gonna have a little bit of tussle into the mid lane. Ooh, the Kriknak actually dives right in. Look at the damage onto Bren. Gotta be careful here, but Bren seems to actually prolong and keep themselves alive while taking down the one. They get the first blood, actually falls up as well, but Myth do take one for themselves.
Okay, so that fight happened. Okay, you get the Sentinel to ult. But the question is, you left top lane. Lubu did a good amount of damage. See Lomi, he dealt a good amount of damage at the top side of the map. Normally, when you do manage to get a kill, you either get something out of that as well. Either a tower, a Sentinel, or maybe an Abyssal Dragon. But no objectives were there to be taken. So it was only a counter-reactive play. But Myth Esports getting the best end of that deal because there's chip damage already at the top side of the turret.
Definitely. And I think even though, the Zenial can go for that split push potential, if you're going to be up against the Lubu and you have to actually respond to your teammate while on that Zenial, you actually, again, leave this Lubu to go for that damage. And it's going to be kind of crucial here for Bren to know when to use Arcadia to actually respond to them. Spirit Sentinel will be taken once again as NY going to be here. And look at the flank chase is coming in from mid. The damage is going to be too surreal. And Irie bursts down in the backline to Violet. This is so good for Myth Esports. And we are seeing something that our panelists and even us here at the caster desk did not anticipate. Myth is giving it to Bren.
Myth Esports with a brilliant adjustment, knowing that the constant pressure at the might buff at the top side of the enemy side, they used the Chognar here as a human ward and therefore anticipated the rotation from Sentinel to the might buff. And you know what? We're going to collapse on you. You leave Kuroki alone, your win condition is just going to be blasted off
Definitely.
the earth.
Yeah, I mean, one wrong step and Myth Esports composition, the Irie, the Kriknak, the Lubu, instant in your face type of guys, But because of that, Bren won't back down just yet. Abyssal Dragon will be the next objective here, but as they see that they can't take it quickly enough, backs away as they see Myth on the horizon. They got to back off right now. Leather Goods on this L'Oreal. Again, one of the best Raz player here, going to be using the newest hero on our patch, and hasn't really shown it just yet. So, what do you think about this L'Oreal? Hasn't really shown up right now, but maybe later into the game.
Perhaps, most likely, L'Oreal scaling works really well. Again, we would have mentioned there's a true damage, but hold that thought, there's a fight.
Oh my goodness. Leather Goods once again. This Jinnar is actually right in your face. Lubu trying to find her follow up as well. Peace Boy, though, will try to go for the zone out burst. Comes in a little bit too late, so he won't have anything to do in that party clash. But still, at the end of it all, Myth Esports push them back, and Bren have to respond to that. Gonna be a question of how does Bren break away from this one?
I actually want to point out that Burst is doing a great job. You obviously know that he is a good Irie player when Kuroki on the Violet doesn't have space at all to do movements.
Oh. Sorry, I was still looking at the rotations there. Do have a little bit of a pause, guys. But again, it's kind of like interesting to see how this L'Oreal hasn't really, again, proved herself in our game. What's going to be the thing now is that Myth is actually capitalizing heavily on that while having all of these assassins in their arsenal. Again, one misstep. And the biggest thing is, I thought that L'Oreal was going to be heavy on mobility skills, but if you're seeing all of these clashes, she is getting picked off time and time again by the Irie. And look at this one. The Zephys, a little bit of the Kobe, the three-pointer fade away, take the 1-for-1, but it's going to be A-okay as there's going to be Lomi in the top side, putting a lot of damage on that tier 2. And Arcadia does not know how to deal with this Lubu as that Zenya. I mean, this is just a warrior versus a fighter, and more so than not, or rather a tank versus a fighter, and more so than not, fighters can deal with that tank.
Exactly, and you see how the Sentinel is having a hard time, and then again, you still need that 5v. You need that 5-man to actually make the Violet and L'Oreal work for yourselves.
Yeah.
Obviously, at this point, you see that Myth Esports is in the lead in terms of pace, objectives, and as well as towers all around. And that's why you can see that Bren Esports is having a hard time finding the fights that they need, because every time that they seem to be ahead in the game, whenever they might win a team fight, it just seems that Myth Esports has already anticipated that and had already prepared a counterplay when it happens.
That is true. Now, they're just going to try to maybe go for that counter Sage buff, but again, this is just like, I think even though Bren was able to go for those aggressive counter jungles in the early game to counter out that Kreknak, to be able to stop his, I would say, his ganking potential, because of course, Might buff does give you quite a bit. It's the Irie in the bottom lane, I feel, or the Abyssal Dragon lane that actually allowed her to get as much farm as possible. But before that, it's going to be a little bit of a clash here. And to look at Myth Esports deal so much damage. Violet, though, does take out the one, but this composition for Myth is built for actually being in the center of it all. Although they could have been a little bit too over-aggressive to that one, as Bren is showing a little bit of resilience in this fight right here. Jinner, though, goes in with the aggression, but the spacing created for Violet will give her a triple kill, and she still survives. Bren keeping themselves alive in this game.
This is exactly the fights that they need. They all have to be together. Make sure that the backline damage dealers, L'Oreal and Violet, are heavily protected by the front line of Bren Esports. If Myth Esports doesn't finish off a certain member at the right time, then they immediately lose the fight, mainly because they have really good scaling for the side of Bren Esports, and eventually they could get punished if they don't manage to clear off certain targets, as Violet and L'Oreal are the type of heroes that eventually, as the game progresses, your cooldowns are going to get reduced, and your mobility skills is just going to give the opposition a hard time to catch you off guard.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game for Myth Esports to, like, at first, it's easy for them to actually find the fight, and if they make a mistake, it's fine, because there's not enough damage for Bren. But as, again, like you said, the game keeps scaling, it kind of seems to adjust that Myth has to adjust the play style, that they have to be exact with how they burst someone down. And if they don't, it's going to be Bren winning that duel.
I do have to agree with you there. I mean, they're the type of team with the composition that they built from Myth Esports. They are good in terms of trying to catch you while you're rotating to a certain area. So they're good at punishing, they're good at catching you off guard, only if you make the right rotations and macro decisions. If you can't predict where your enemy is going to go, then you can eventually try to punish them and get out of the fight. That's why you have a Kreknak. That's why you have an Irie. That's why you have a Lubu. And it's perfect for them. And you do have the Chognar just so that you can immediately repair the mistakes and remove the CCs that, you know, that led you into that fight to begin with. And with the composition that they've drafted, Irie and Lubu, they can immediately swap places in terms of creating pressure, either top side or bot side. They can either one of them could duel or try to outplay Senyo.
That's true, but the biggest thing here is that rotation-wise, it's gonna be difficult because that is a Zenial. He doesn't have to really win the duel, more so that he just has to delay the fight, and that actually gives a lot more to Bren in the split push sense, because a 4v4 with Myth versus Bren, I feel like I have to go for Bren on this one just because they have so much frontline potential, and this Violet is just gonna be in the backline, like you guys keep saying, dealing the damage. And if they try to force it with just a 4-man from Myth, they might not have enough to burst someone down, and it's kind of putting a bit of a bad complex here for Myth to actually find that opening. So they need to force an engagement here rather than go for split push for me, or at least a pick-off, just to make it so that Bren has to go out of their comfort zone.
We'll have to see, as Myth Esports is doing that exact thing again. They're doing the 1-3-1, try to zone them out, try to figure out where they're going to be rotating next, as again, this type of strategy is working so far for Myth Esports because they've gotten so much towers already for the past few minutes, and therefore Bren Esports has to roam around the whole map just to make sure that they're not going to take another turret, not even a single chip damage, or maybe even gather a wave so that they could get that wave advantage for them to actually get either the Dark Slayer later or maybe even the Sentinel. So far, what they've been doing for the aggressive invades is not working because they're losing control over the map due to the fact that they've been losing turrets time and time again.
Yeah, so now the question is, who will crack first? This is a game now of attrition wherein both of these teams don't really want to initiate upon each other because one simple mistake can lead to a Darkslayer buff, which is a huge advantage for any team right now. Lubu's going to be still in the bottom lane, so if Myth Esports actually goes for this fight, they might lose it quickly. But, like you said, that split push potential or that split by the Lubu going to give a lot of waves in the bottom lane. If nobody actually adjusts to that, this could be the opening that Myth are looking for.
Myth Esports knows how to play with their composition. As long as we don't fight them 5v5, we're gonna be fine. We're not gonna face the Senmiel as a headache, but look at that, Chagnar's super low.
Oh, Chagnar does heal himself back right up. Irie bursts rather into the sidelines. Oh my goodness, Arcadia is taking quite a bit of damage, but it immediately goes back onto this Irie. Gotta go back right now, gotta retreat back onto her tier 2 and actually recall, and with that, that's the Darkslayer opening already that Bren are looking for. This is not what we wanted to happen here. That middle misposition for Myth Esports costed them an easy Darkslayer.
It's an evolving game here for both of these sides. You see, each of the teams are adjusting. You know what? You keep split pushing us. Might as well be together as a 5 and focus our resources in the Darkslayer, which worked out pretty well because Myth Esports definitely do not want a 5v5 team fight. But since they do have the Darkslayer, they are forced to deal with this buff plus the scaling of L'Oreal and Violet.
Here we go. Jinner goes in. Balls of flame. Spin to win. The damage onto Kuroki. He goes down. The Violet is actually out of the fight right now. This could be the opening that Myth Esports are looking for. Armor as well. Beast Boy. Oh my goodness though. Here comes Anti-Hero with the Zephys. 1, 2, 3. It could be a Cricknack 1v1 mono and Leather Goods win it. That's gonna be an ace for Bren. They did lose 4, but they still wipe out Myth.
This is why you banned L'Oreal. I'm pretty sure maybe next game they're not gonna allow this to happen anymore. And as you can see, as the game progresses, L'Oreal is just gonna get more painful and painful. And if you do not eliminate this L'Oreal, then it's just honestly gonna be a difficult time for Myth Esports as the game progresses.
And I mean, after that, top tier 3 is gonna be broken already by Leather Goods. And Myth Esports, I mean, it's still kind of neck and neck in terms of the overall gold net worth here. But now, like you said, even if they take away at the Violet, if they don't immediately follow up on the L'Oreal, she's gonna be a very dangerous target to go up against, because the biggest thing here for Myth is that they have to be in the middle of the fight to actually make anything happen. Even though they made such a great fight from that one, it might not be enough. And now we're seeing here that Myth Esports is gonna be a rock in a hard place. Violet goes in and capitalizes, and this is just not looking good at all for Myth. 2, 3 kills going already to the side of Bren, and the dive in by Burst, he is going super aggressive, uses his ultimate there, gets the shield, but it's not really gonna matter anymore. NY, the last man standing, gets bursted down, and a double kill for Anti-Hero, and this could be, with 20, 30, and 40 seconds on that respawn, a straight push onto that core.
It's like Bren Esports has had enough. You know what? You're going to split push? Okay, we're going to try to invest our resources in this one single point so that you are the one who's forced to respond to us, instead of the other way around. It's a job well done because they're confident enough that they've scaled already in towards the late game. They've got the L'Oreal, they've got the Violet, and Myth Esports quite powerless in the fight, even though they had the advantage of trying to catch them out throughout a rotation, but it was already too late. They couldn't close down and apply as much pressure during the early phases of the game where they pretty much gotten what they've needed so far. But again, you are facing a Violet and a L'Oreal with a lot of protection from the Ormar and the Senmiel, plus the Zephys being an additional threat in terms of damage and CC. So with Myth Esports now, what is their game plan knowing that Bren Esports has cracked the code?
I mean, Myth right now, they're kind of losing their nerve. It feels like they kind of want to catch out Bren here, but like you said, Bren is have at them, and it seems like Bren again is catching out Myth Myth time after time after time, and this is just putting Myth in a situation wherein they think that it's good to actually engage, but Bren are already ready for it. So now the biggest question is, can they catch them off before all turrets are down?
That is a very tough question, as they've been doing really good wave management. So far, Lubu is forced to split push, and with that kind of information, they have the confidence to actually enter the fight and try to pick someone off and maybe just try to siege and be patient, clear down the waves, which is what they're doing right now.
And now fight ensues once again. This is going to be a possible Hail Mary clash for Myth Esports. They're trying to play around this wall right here, but look at the damage, look at the AoE. They try to force themselves into the back line, but it's just making it it's actually a bit too difficult here for Myth. Lomi trying to do the best that he can. The shield is there, but the Violet is healing up ever so quickly. And one more players might be enough, but it's really not gonna matter anymore, as other members of Bren will go for the core, and game number 1 will be had by a blue side team, Bren Esports.
Playing to their win conditions, playing to their compositions, that is what the match we have witnessed between Bren Esports and Myth Esports. It was a job well done for both sides. Obviously, early game, it could have worked for Myth Esports. It's just that they weren't able to close the game in time for them to take advantage of the early lead that they've attained. Meanwhile, for Bren Esports, they're very patient, and once they know their spikes, bam, they manage to obviously take an advantage of the situation and finish the game for themselves.
You know, you should do that bam with like hand
I
pistols or
just
something.
really like to do this gesture.
Bam.
It's better than...
I mean, yeah, definitely the composition for Myth made for the early game. If they couldn't really have that early game advantage and just blow up at Bren, it was just gonna be Bren, you know, surviving and then coming back on the later stages. Anyways, to give back or to give more insight on that one, we'll be passing it to our analysts. So you guys, you know what to do. Just go do it. Bang, bang.
Thank you so much, Asarai and Riku, and we're back for the Glow PPGL 2018 Arena of Valor. Of course, I'm Aki from MineskiTV, and with me here will be Arctic, Rockheart, and Amplifier. So that I'm quite surprised with Myth Esports' performance because, as we said earlier, they're like the underdogs of this match. But you know, it was a very, very close game. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Absolutely great. Like,
Yeah, I have to agree. Myth Esports, especially the first half, it was a pleasant surprise to see them perform that the way they did. They were really putting Bren Esports on their back,
Yes,
despite
yes.
having L'Oreal. L'Oreal was really... this game is sort of a tester to see how powerful L'Oreal really is and whether or not she'll be continued to be picked or banned throughout the rest of the games. Honestly, I think you might as well just ban L'Oreal really because we
Yes,
saw
I
that
think-
even though Myth Esports was able to do really well during the first half of the game, L'Oreal was turning fights around single-handedly as we started to reach the mid to late game. So Bren, they're still showing that experience that they have, that even though they're losing the early game, they can regain that composure, remember what their team is good at doing, and then use that
Yes.
strength to get back into the late game.
and both teams displaying adaptability, ability to just look at the map. What's happening on the map? Can we do this? Can we just keep doing what we do, or do we need to change something up? And that's exactly what Bren Esports did. They kind of was splitting a lot of the split push fights, and as Riku did mention, hey, they put all of their eggs in one basket, and look at that basket right there.
Yeah, and I think in all fairness to Myth Esports, they had a clear idea as to how they can kind of play around
Yes.
the L'Oreal. It's just that when Bren Esports reached their optimal spike, when they started grouping up, it was just way too overwhelming for Myth Esports.
Look at that! Look at that!
I think their
Jeez.
I think their three protect two lineup was went successfully. And of course, let's not forget Leather Goods.
Oh,
Yes.
He
the
was
stand
so great with that ace skill.
Yeah, he's using an angel right now, but he
Yeah.
acted like a god in this battlefield. Just look at the amount of damage and all the movements that he's doing all over the map. It's like the rest of the team is just at the back at this point, and they're just letting Leather the Goods shine
Yeah.
as the angel he is right now.
The L'Oreal and the... I think Myth Esports should learn on this game that they should ban out the L'Oreal.
Absolutely. Don't you think it was a bit ballsy to just leave the L'Oreal out for picking?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. Not just the L'Oreal, but the 3 picks right off the bat coming in from Bren Esports. It's almost like asking for it. And that's what I was saying right there. These 3 heroes right here, they're at the top as far as what roles they fulfill for these teams. And I think that was a clear demonstration right there as to why.
Yes. So they showed Myth Esports that they can run the L'Oreal lineup, and I think if it's not a priority ban, so I think it will be a risk for Esports if they give it to Bren Esports again.
Or take it for yourselves. And let's see if you can run that same
Yeah,
thing. You
yeah.
can run a Miracle Worker with L'Oreal, and you know, I don't know if Bren's gonna allow that to happen though. Let's see. Well, that's something I'm really looking forward
If
to
L'Oreal's not banned,
in the second game. Exactly.
Yeah, we have to
Honestly.
give credits, or we have to give credit to Myth Esports though, because we saw that for majority of the time, or maybe half of the time, they knew how to deal with the composition of Bren Esports. They knew they had to reach the back line, and so there were these moments in the game where you see Myth Esports hiding in the bush, waiting for the carries to go to them, and then catching them off guard in the back line. They theoretically they knew how to pull it off. It's just that it was very difficult. I think maybe Myth Esports wants to look at their draft, because if you